Welcome back. And in video number 7, the question we're going to address is who will design your book cover? And as you can imagine, the cover of your book, just like the title of your book, is amazingly important. It's the first impression, and it could be the difference between somebody walking right past and somebody picking it up. And we're
Its
going to...
cover.
What's that?
People really do judge your book by its cover.
Yeah, I guess it's the cliche of cliches, but it really is true. And well, I guess your book cover was a really good example of this. But there's really just two things we wanted to cover in this lesson, and the first one being some suggestions on where you can go to actually get some help with your design. Assuming you're not a designer. Now, this is called the DIY bestseller, this product that you're watching right now. So maybe you have some design skills and you want to try your hand at it. We're going to give you some suggestions of to where you can outsource that job. But if you don't want to, then we're also going to give you some suggestions as to how you can give yourself the best chance of success with some basic design rules. So let's first talk about, Brad, some of the best places people can go if they do want to outsource the step of having the book cover designed for them. I know the most obvious choice in our world is 99 Designs. Let's talk a little bit about them, and then maybe a few other suggestions if people want to shop around to get a book cover designed.
I wouldn't say that they're the most obvious choice. You'd be surprised how many people haven't heard of 99 Designs, and I think one of the reasons why is that they're not cheap. They're not expensive, but they're not cheap.
Right.
I think a lot of people say, oh, I just get my cover design on Fiverr, right? I get it for $5. That's actually, I would say in our business probably the most obvious choice, but it's the worst choice. I would say 99 Designs is definitely the best choice you could make if you're going to have it done by somebody else, because anything that you get done there, I don't know how many people have ever heard of them or how they work, but multiple designers will mock up concepts for you, and you get to choose the one that you want. I just did this. I think I mentioned one of the earlier videos. I'm working on an iPhone app called FranPix, and I went there, and I think I only spent I want to say $250. And I said, I need a new icon for my iPhone app. Here's some of the elements I want to see. I gave them a whole bunch of details about what I expected. And then I think 60 to 70, I think it was 68 designers over the course of a week spitballed different iPhone icon concepts to me. I had 68 to choose from.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I picked the one that I like. That designer got the money. The rest of them put that stuff in their portfolio and moved on to the next job. And I got my iPhone icon. So you can do this with your book cover, right? Same thing. You go in there, tell them what you want. There's 3 different price tiers to choose from. And people are always like, oh, should I buy the bronze, silver, gold? I'm cheap. I buy the bronze every time. And I'm always overwhelmed with choice. And a good friend of mine, Dave, did a gold package once for his logo. He went up with 400 choices.
That's too many.
What was too many? He had us all voting, and it got ridiculous. I got to a point where I was like, I'm not going to vote on this anymore. You got too many choices here, dude. I gave you one I like. I don't want to look at it anymore. And I'm the kind of guy who I just want to move on, right? I don't need to look at 400 concepts. Give me 50 to 60, and that's too many. So I'll go through them. I'll have a couple of colleagues look at them. We pick the one we like, and you could go back to the designers and say, during the project phase, you can say, hey, I really like what you did here, but could you try these colors or try it this way? And that designer will go make those alterations for free for you.
Yeah, because they want to win the bid.
Yeah, they want you to pick their stuff because that's how they get paid. So probably the best choice in the business, man. It's either that or do it yourself, in my book.
Right.
If you're good designed by someone, unless you have a kick-ass graphic designer that you already work with, that you trust and love, and you know that they're awesome and they're a rock star or whatever it is, then great. But otherwise, go to 99 Designs if you're going to outsource.
Well, yeah, and you're getting your pick of some of the top talent, and a lot of the people that go in there, we've used them for a number of our projects for logos, different businesses and sites we've created, and we were just blown away. We couldn't believe that for a relatively small amount of money, depending on your budget, but a couple $100, and you're picking these amazing designs that you could never have come up with on your own, unless of course that's what you did for a living. You'd be quite impressed, and they can really tailor it to anything you want to do. The website gives you a lot of different options to pick and choose, and set the stage what I want this thing to look at or to look like. Now, having said that, we want to stick to the DIY theme here, Brad. And once again, I want to turn it over to you because you've been doing design. You've done a lot of your own design for quite a number of years. And obviously, there's way more of an art than there is a science to designing things. It is art, so to speak. But there are some guidelines. There are certain things you can do to make sure that the design, specifically, obviously, we're talking about a book cover, that you can do to make sure that your book cover works, that it's not going to bomb and totally ruin any chance you have at success. And there's a number of different ways you can go, but there's some simple things you can follow. So why don't we go through basic design rules that anybody can follow to give themselves a good chance at having a winner?
And this applies to picking a designer on 99 Designs just as much, right? If you're looking at, if you're doing it yourself or you're picking a designer, you want to follow these rules because not every designer will follow these rules. So for me, there's a number of them, and there's no real order to this, but I'll kind of start. I think is most important, and we'll work our way down. The first one is print out the cover. It's a huge mistake people make. Is it looks really good on my screen. It's going to look great on print. You'd be surprised how often something looks like garbage when you print it, especially when there's like gradient or like gradient colors or Web 2.0 style graphics that are like bubbly and shadowed and that kind of stuff. It doesn't always look very good on print. It might look great on your screen. It might look awesome on your website, but print that out and it doesn't look great. And if it doesn't, scrap it. Understanding that not only does it have to look good printed out, it has to look really good small. So make it a thumbnail, right? Make it as small as the thumbnail on Amazon's homepage for every book cover. How does it look now?
That's a great point because it could look really cluttered if you tried to put too much into one spot.
People do it all the time.
Mm.
Use fonts that aren't bold. They'll use scripty handwriting style fonts that are very hard to read, and they think that they're elegant, beautiful because they look like some calligraphy in a wedding invitation they got once.
Papyrus.
Yeah, exactly. Papyrus font for the win. Stay away from these. Stick to basic blocky fonts. I like to use Arial, Helvetica, Times New Roman, basic fonts that are sort of inherent. We see them in everything. Helvetica is one of the most popular fonts in the world. You see it in logos, you see it on billboards and advertising everywhere. My entire book cover is all Helvetica font, different Helvetica style font. There's multiple in the Helvetica family. Same with Arial, same with Times. There's a number of different families of fonts you can kind of work from, but stay away from the papyruses and the Comic Sans and the gimmicky fonts. You want to stay away from. You also want to stay away from the ones that you think look elegant. If they're too thin, if they're too curly and whimsical or whatever, they're not gonna look good in print, and they're definitely not gonna look good in a thumbnail. So think that through. And also understanding the difference between raster and vector graphics. A lot of people don't understand this basic rule, right? But there's two different types of graphics when we talk about digital graphics that we take to print. There's raster and there's vector. To break it down and make it really simple for you, a raster graphic is like a photograph, right? It's a high color count. Usually a photograph, like a JPEG photograph, will have millions of colors in that one photograph, millions of different shades of colors. A vector graphic, the best example of a vector graphic is a font, right? You know how no matter how big you make a font, the edges are always nice and clean and crisp. That's inherently what a vector is. A vector is usually on my cover, the cover of my book, every single element on the cover of my book is a vector. There's a cartoon. It's a vector cartoon. That means it's low color count, and it's not actually a graphic in the traditional sense of like a photograph. It's a cartoon graphic, and it's a vector. In other words, there's a mathematical calculation behind the graphic, meaning that I can make that graphic infinitely large. I can put it on the side of a truck or on a billboard, and it's going to look just as beautiful as if I shrink it down and put it on my book cover. And whereas when I take a photograph, right, a photograph is going to hit a physical limit where, let's say you take a picture with an 8 megapixel camera, right? It can only really make that photograph about the size of an 8x10 sheet of paper, maybe a little bit larger. The larger I start making it, now it has to stretch the pixels, and we've all seen when images get pixelated when they get bigger.
Oh yeah.
And so a lot of people will use low res raster graphics for things like their title. So think that through. You want to make sure that whoever's designing your book, or if you're designing your book, you're working in a platform like Adobe Illustrator, or somewhere that allows for vector and raster graphics to mix together. But you always want to make sure that you're using proper fonts. You're not pulling some JPEG of your title and putting it in and placing it on your book cover, because it's not going to print well. You want to use the real font. You want to use vector graphics whenever possible, and understanding that difference is very important to making a good looking cover. So print it out, shrink it down. Um, avoid gradients, avoid Web 2.0 style graphics, avoid drop shadows, avoid a lot of the cliches that you'll see working really well on a web page. They don't translate to print, and understanding that is so important, because you'll see it all the time. Where someone just gave me their book last weekend, and it's one of those covers that I could tell the guy never printed it out. He saw the screenshot and it looked really good and said go. But understand that your screen has a resolution of 72 dots per square inch, and your printer, the cover of your book will be printed at 300 dots per square inch. So the resolution difference is where the loss becomes apparent. A book that looks really good in 72 DPI may look like garbage in 300, because it can't scale up nicely, and so the shadows start to look choppy and the edges don't look good. And it's amazing how these little things don't translate from screen to print. So be mindful of that. Also, keep your color counts low. My book cover has 3 colors. It has green, black, and red. It's only 3 colors, and it's on a white background. So I guess you could say it's a 4-color, but the background doesn't count. If you're going to use a white background, or any color background, doesn't really count. Low color count, and low font count. If you're an amateur designer, big mistake people make is they try and throw every cool font they have in their font library on their cover. Right? It's like, oh, the title's this, my author name is over here in this other font, and the byline is in this font, and then I have the write-up on the back, I use a different font. And it's very hard to follow. Stick to 1, maybe 2 fonts. If you have to use 3, be sparing. Try not to. Less is more when it comes to your font count. So low color count, low font count will make a book cover easier to read.
Wow, that's some heavy advice there on design. That's probably why I'm not a designer. Just, I think you either get it or you don't. So if you're like me, you can outsource it. But now that at least you have some tips that Brad shared with you that you can take to, like we said at the beginning, 99 Designs. Now you can be a little bit more of an educated buyer. And also when you're deciding on your bid, now you've got some tips that'll help you pick probably the best logo slash design for you. Anything else to add?
No, I think I don't know how long we went there, but I think I covered.
It was a good lesson on design. Maybe we'll break that out into its own course another day as well. We will
Good.
we'll see you in the next video.
Here.